I know it sounds like I'm making this up, but I'm not whatsoever. Veteran disability benefits are truly under attack, and it's happening right now, right in front of our faces. I'm going to show you exactly what I'm talking about. In fact, the recommendation given to the Senate, which is the craziest part of all this, is that anyone at 60% or below should essentially just have their disability compensation deleted and get back to work. Go to the factories, says what we just heard. All right. Now, this is going to be a long one, and I ask that you watch till the end. There's some serious stuff here. I'm not joking around. The Senate Veterans Affairs Committee just gave some major airtime to this viewpoint, and I'm going to show you exactly what was said. And yes, it's going to make you mad, so buckle up. All right, here we go. Let's just come out the gate and to get this thing.
All of us to honor the contract. Thank you, and I look forward to answering any questions the committee may have.
Not him. This guy's cool.
Thank you.
Ryan
Dr.
Galucci's
Gade.
awesome.
Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for the opportunity to testify on the VA disability compensation system. My testimony will differ from most you've heard. I'm a member of no veteran service organization and have no motive other than to help restore the lives and dignity of millions of veterans. For too long, you've been told that the best way to care for veterans is to shovel billions of taxpayer dollars into their pockets. This approach has resulted in a veteran class that is sicker, more marginally employed, and more suicidal than ever. By paying veterans to be sick, we create more sick veterans, separated from meaningful lives of purpose, and we deepen our suicide crisis. I developed this perspective through hard experience and long study. I was wounded in combat twice, losing my right leg and spending a year at Walter Reed. After recovery, I earned a master's degree and joined the White House Domestic Policy Council, where my previously acquired user-level experience was bolstered by my work alongside both the Joel Shalala Commission and the Scott Commission. I later completed a PhD in public policy focused on the VA claims process, and while teaching at West Point, co-led the Independence Project, a randomized control trial demonstrating the powerful link between employment and health. In 2021, I published Wounding Warriors, How Bad Policy is Making Veterans Sicker and Poorer, and recently served 2 years as Virginia's Commissioner of Veteran Services. The surge in disability claims is not due to combat injuries, but to a culture that rewards illness. Last year alone, over 450,000 new compensation recipients entered the system, while total combat wounded from the global war on terror number around 50,000. Last year, more than 270,000 veterans began receiving compensation for tinnitus, which is 100 times the number of GWAT amputees over a 20-year period. Blessedly high survival rates from combat wounds are not the cause of the growth. This lie allows advocates to tuck every veteran disability claim under a cloak of virtue. Instead, the avalanche of claims is driven by nonprofits and pay-to-play claims companies that encourage veterans to selectively exaggerate or falsify symptoms to, quote, grab all they can, end quote. Aging, genetic, and lifestyle conditions are increasingly labeled service-connected, resulting in tens or hundreds of thousands of veterans rated as 100% disabled who have no true incapacity or whose incapacity would have eventuated regardless of service status. I propose 2 principles of reform. 1, meaningful employment is powerful medicine. A 2020 paper called Employment a, quote, critical mental health intervention. Unfortunately, veteran participation in the labor market, especially among men in prime working years, is markedly lower than their civilian counterparts and has been steadily declining over the past 20 years. Disability compensation discourages work by rewarding inactivity. Some programs, like IU, create a direct barrier to work. Any separation from the labor force causes isolation, malaise, and reduced income, coupled with a demand for ever higher disability payments. We should shift dollars from paying veterans to be sick towards meaningful incentives for gaining and maintaining productive employment. Early positive incentives can have a long-lasting positive effect, as demonstrated by the Independence Project. 2, disability compensation is a destructive goal. Disability is a negative word. In Latin, dis means not, opposite of, or apart. The disability compensation system pulls veterans into a destructive identity as, quote, disabled veteran, rather than helping create a positive, forward-looking life and career. This system is anti-thriving, anti-productivity, and ultimately anti-veteran. Further, it discourages future generations serving by painting veterans as a troubled problem class. The compensation system traps veterans into a disability identity, teaching them to chase 100% rating as a proof of honor or source of validation. 9 of the top 10 conditions for newly rated veterans are easily exaggerated or totally unverifiable. We need a system that affirms veterans' capacity to thrive, not their presumed fragility. Here are several steps that would protect the integrity of the system. 1, treat but do not compensate for non-disabling conditions and eliminate conditions caused by genetics, aging, or lifestyle from the compensation rolls. Sleep apnea is one obvious example. There are hundreds of others. 2, require active treatment for compensated mental health conditions. If compensation is warranted, so is care. 3, extend VA medical eligibility to all service-connected conditions without tying it to disability ratings, removing an incentive for false claims. The current disability system robs veterans of purpose and dignity, trapping them in idleness and despair. Further, the isolation brought on by separation from the labor market can and does send many veterans into a morass of tragic consequences. Reform will be difficult. Entrenched interests protect the status quo, but it is essential. A close look at past changes shows that what survives the legislative and rulemaking process are usually additions to existing programs or the creation of new programs. The VA budget grows inexorably despite the system causing immense ongoing harm. Deep structural reform will save lives and restore what veterans truly need: meaning, work, and hope. And to Senator Tuberville, I say, War Eagle.
Okay, I can spend an hour talking about what he just said, but the basis of his argument is that combat veterans matter, everyone else doesn't. That's why he compared tinnitus to how many GWAT amputees there are. He's saying there's about 50,000 combat veterans, and everyone else pushed to the wayside. They don't matter. In fact, the way he twisted it is like we are feeding off of the federal government and being moochers and leeches. All right. Most notably, he did say that 9 out of the top 10 disabilities are being exaggerated and not verifiable. On what data? Lower back, your spine, your lower spine is in the top 10. Are you telling me you can't take an x-ray of IVDS in your spine, or lumbar strain, or radiculopathy, or your knees? That's in the top 10. Mental health is in the top 10. Tinnitus is in the top 10. Hearing loss, hello, that's largely rated at 0%. That's in the top 10. None of those can be verifiable, right? Tinnitus, I'll kind of give it to you, right? But his entire argument is that if you're not a combat veteran, you don't matter. Now, I would like to say that that's the worst of it, but it gets way worse than that. That's nothing. All right. And so we have a few clips we're going to watch of him testifying before the Senate. All right. Let's go to 5812 here, which is right smack on, close enough.
A lot of money's been put into this. Anybody?
Here we go.
Senator, I'd like to just briefly point out that there are several things in the PACT Act that are not only problematic from a sort of overloading the system point of view, but also problematic from a moral point of view. So here's an example. The PACT Act makes hypertension presumptive condition for all Vietnam veterans who are exposed to Agent Orange. What is not mentioned in the PACT Act or any of the discussion around that is that when you norm for age, sex, and race, non-veterans of those age groups have the same exact hypertension rates as veterans do in those age groups. So we're compensating for something that is, forgive the expression, but old fat people get hypertension. That's going to happen to sort of all of us at some point. But what the PACT Act did was allowed people to shift the responsibility for those lifestyle conditions from themselves to the government and blame the government for problems that are not the fault of the government, and therefore taxpayers are taking a bath on that.
Yeah, so apparently this guy, if you're a Vietnam era veteran who was exposed to Agent Orange, you have hypertension, tough luck, so what? I don't care what the medical studies say on what brought this to light. Source, trust me, bro. That's essentially what I heard, right? He's attacking Vietnam-era veterans for being service-connected for hypertension via presumption. In my opinion, the United States of America did too little, too late for the Vietnam-era veterans. And that's not even the big part. The big part is it's because of the Vietnam era that us GWAT veterans even have what we have in the first place. And this retired lieutenant colonel, dare I say washed up, has essentially labeled all Vietnam-era veterans as feeding off of the government, blaming the government that their hypertension is a result of being old and fat, instead of the medical community backing exposures and studies to Agent Orange causing hypertension. But wait, that's still not the worst of it yet. The worst is yet to come. Let's go to our next stop on this train of fun we're having today. 126.12. Here we go. Close enough. Let's keep on keeping on.
And open a new chapter for their life and succeed there.
Sir, thanks for that question. When I went through the transition assistance program when I was leaving the military, we spent about half a day on employment stuff and about a day and a half on how to file disability claims. And the proverbial little lady in tennis shoes stood up there and said, claim everything you can. It's free money. All you got to do is go get it. And if you have these conditions, you get this. But if you look at the DBQ carefully, and she like stomped on the floor and said, if you look at the DBQ carefully, you can see that if you have these conditions, you can get to 70%. And if you have these conditions, you can get to 100%. And so it was right there in front of people that all you have to do is exaggerate and you can get paid more. That's not actually my main problem. My main problem is what happens then. Because if a veteran is separated from the labor market, they don't work anymore. They're sitting at home. They're sitting on the couch. Their wife is going to work. If it's a male veteran, the children are going to school. And what happens when those people come back home is the veteran is still sitting there. And that's a life of disempowerment, not empowerment. And men get so much identity from their work that we ought to be putting all of our effort into positive, meaningful, gainful employment and get away from saying to everybody, hey, get everything you can from the government. All you got to do is fill out this little form and we'll give you disability payments. Thank you.
So you've heard it, folks. All you have to do is use specific words. You don't need medical evidence, right? You don't need a current chronic diagnosis. You don't need a clinical diagnosis. You don't need symptoms. You don't need treatment. You don't need healthcare. You don't need anything. All you have to do to get rated by the VA, not to mention be rated at 100%, is just use certain words and claim certain disabilities. Apparently, VA disability is so easy that all you have to do is fill out a little form, and bada bing, bada boom, you're going to be collecting money for the rest of your life. I didn't know VA disability claims was that easy. I think everyone would disagree with our esteemed colleague here, Peter, dare I say. Let's see. This is close enough. Here we go. It gets way worse. Okay. Let's keep on listening.
Alternatives to how the disability system is currently structured. And this is open to anybody. I mean, how can we better structure this so that after our veterans leave, take the uniform off, we're incentivizing them to find new careers and succeed in those careers, but still recognizing they have conditions they have to live with.
Listen.
Sir, if I may really quick, the way that we talk about disability is different than any other program talks about disability. The bar is much lower. The conditions are much broader. And I'm not making this proposal necessarily, but if we were to take the people 60% and below in 2024 annual benefits report, and we were to say, you know what, those are conditions that we're going to treat for, but we're not going to compensate for those because they're not a disability by any other definition of the word. What you would do is you would save $20 billion a year that you could then put towards meaningful job programs. You could put towards internships and externships and education and even higher benefits for the triple amputee and the person with a traumatic brain injury. There's a way to do this that's smart and that incentivizes the right things, and that's what I'm just begging folks to focus on.
He's begging folks. Begging it. You heard it here. If you're 60% and below, your VA disability compensation is going to be deleted under this not proposal necessarily, under that viewpoint. So IVDS in your spine is rated at 40%, or heck, let's even call it 50, deleted, gone. Get over it. Go back to the factories. Go back to work. You'll be okay. That leg that this dude has blown off, by the way, is rated at 40%. That's gone. Sleep apnea at 50%. That's deleted. The joke is that's actually happening. Mental health at 50%, that's gone. Flat feet at 50%, that's gone. Tinnitus at 10, hearing loss at 0, that's gone. Hypertension at 0, that's gone. Lumbar strain with radiculopathy in each leg, that's gone. Knees, that's gone. Hips, that's gone. If you're 60% or below, if that VA rating is 60% or below, it's getting deleted. That's what this dude just said to the Senate. He got major airtime to say that, and that should bother every single person watching this video, right? Are we setting the stage here for VA disability benefits to just be blown out of the water, and then veterans become the new target of the American people, right? At the beginning of the year, it was federal employees who are leeching off the government. Okay, that's over. We're done past that. Are veterans going to be next? Riddle me that, all right? And I'm serious about this. I'm absolutely serious about this. And this one's really going to make people mad. The only person to stand up to our esteemed, retired, washed up Lieutenant Colonel, it wasn't a Republican. In fact, the Republicans, most people didn't even challenge on what he was saying and took it as truth. Like they agreed with what he was saying. The only person, single person, that stood up and fought for veterans was Senator Duckworth. Now, you might be a diehard Republican or a Trump supporter. You might even be a diehard Democrat. I'm telling you right now, that's not the place for it. Not right now. All right, this is some serious stuff. The fact of the matter is this. Senator Duckworth was the only person who fought against Lieutenant Colonel Gade's, I believe, viewpoint. And we're gonna listen to her statement in full. Okay, that's at 1:30:15, and she's the only person who's in our corner. I mean that. So here we go.
Sir Sheehy, thank you. Sir Duckworth.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I have to say I must express disappointment in the decision to convene a legislative hearing that amplifies the Washington Post's misleading and flawed attack against the VA disability benefit system, especially by inviting a witness who supports those sentiments. And adding insult to injury, this effort to falsely depict our nation's disabled veterans as a group of dishonest fraudsters and cheaters originates from a paper that is owned by a multi-billionaire whose net worth exceeds by tens of billions of dollars the total amount the United States government spends on disability compensation to over 6 million disabled veterans in any given year. Look, nobody's denying the unfortunate reality that a small number of veterans exist who will dishonor their own service and that of their fellow veterans by defrauding the VA. These individuals can and should be prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. If we want to enhance deterrence, we should strengthen enforcement resources to increase the rates of criminal investigations, prosecutions, and convictions of these fraudsters. The mistake we must avoid is allowing a minority of criminals to dictate the redesign of the VA disability benefit system into a bureaucratic black box that is more frustrating and less fair and will leave more veterans waiting and dying, waiting to get their benefits that they've earned. Since we met many years ago at Walter Reed, I've been disappointed, Colonel Gade, in watching your journey. You and I were there together. We suffered together. We recovered together. But I have to say, I've been disappointed in watching your journey to becoming one of the leading critics of the entire concept of disability compensation for disabled veterans. And I do feel that you believe that you're simply offering our fellow disabled veterans some tough love that everyone else is too afraid to give to inspire them to achieve the success that you've been so very fortunate to earn. However, your rhetoric, particularly in downplaying the severity of the reality of the invisible wounds of war, runs the real risk of doing more harm than good. Portraying disabled veterans as a group of takers who will happily never work again for $3,100 per month is incredibly condescending and disrespectful to these heroic Americans. Disabled veterans, like any American, want to work for more than just money. They're driven by a sense of mission, purpose, and meaning. And your characterization of disabled veterans who accept disability compensation as being moochers who are trapped by the system advances a very damaging stereotype that shames many veterans into foregoing VA benefits at a cost to themselves and their loved ones. So there's an irony that the VA is being accused of being too generous, too trusting, and too focused on enhancing efficiency for disabled veterans by a paper whose owner is famous for accumulating a vast fortune by adopting a core management principle, obsessive customer focus. So my question for the VSO leaders on the panel is simple. Do our disabled veterans deserve worse treatment from the United States government?
No, they don't.
No, they do not.
Should Congress require VA to presume that every disabled veteran applying for benefits is guilty of fraud?
They shouldn't because they're not.
Should VA force every disabled veteran to fight through copious amounts of paperwork and push through layer upon layer of code harsh bureaucracy to prove beyond a reasonable doubt to obtain what are often quite modest disability compensation benefits?
Senator, no.
We must never forget that Congress and VA have worked hard for many decades to end an unacceptable status quo where the VA benefit system was hostile, combative, and stunningly inefficient. My larger fear is that our committee indulging in efforts to demonize the VA disability benefit system will lead us to creating a harmful guardrails that do reduce improper payments, but at the cost of scores of eligible disabled veterans giving up and abandoning efforts to secure the benefits they earned when they served our country in uniform. Would any of the witnesses testifying on behalf of VSOs like to elaborate on that threat and why criticism of VA trying to instill a culture that seeks the let's get to yes is preferable to a culture that seeks to get to no?
Yeah, so Ryan Gallucci answered that question beautifully. Yeah, I mean, this is real. I want to know your thoughts on this, okay? This is, I don't even know what to say, all right? I am so angry. I'm trying not to use bad words. I don't even know what to say whenever I listen to Lieutenant Colonel Gade speak. And the worst part about this is that he's not speaking on YouTube. He's not speaking to the internet. He's speaking to the Senate Veterans Affairs Committee, who for some reason, no one combated the fact that if you just claim these conditions and say these things, you're going to have this rating. People just accepted that as truth. And now the Senate's probably like, oh, man, maybe we should do something about that, you know? Yes, you should be worried. You should be worried about this, okay? I have so many more thoughts on this. This is already getting too long. I'm going to save that for another video. And yeah, more to follow. If you made it to the end, thank you very much. Definitely let me know. I appreciate it.